Okay. Welcome to Rambam, teachings of Maimonides. We are learning the book of Carbonos, of sacrifices. We are in the laws of Bechiris of today we're going to learn a new commandment about giving the 10th animal as a tithe to the Kohen. The Kohen, the priest, who doesn't get a share of the land, right? And therefore and his share is that of God to serve in the holy temple, to do the service there on behalf of the people. So the Kohen is given different different things to compensate for the fact that he has no livelihood, but working in the holy temple. And here's a positive commandment, chapter 6. We're doing the second chapter of today's 3 chapters, okay? Chapter 6. It is a positive commandment to separate 1 out of every 10 kosher animals which are born to a person each year. This mitzvah applies only to cattle and sheep. Only to cattle and sheep. As the verse states, all the tithes of your cattle and sheep. The tithing of animals applies with regard to ordinary animals, but not to consecrated ones. Right. In other words, if I took this, if I have an animal over here and I said, oh, I'm consecrating this animal to go to the holy temple, for one of my offerings for the holiday coming up, then that's not including it that's not one of the 10, right? Because first of all, it's already consecrated, right? It applies in Eretz Yisrael. It applies in Eretz Yisrael and in the diaspora, in the area that the temple was standing, and in the area when the temple is not standing. So, even today, this law would apply. Not certain. I don't know if I was going to explain how that applies today. I'm not certain what that means. Okay. Nevertheless, the forbade tithing animals in the present era. Oh, okay. Here we go. Here gives us the answer. We just have to be a little patient. Okay. And ordained that they should be tithed only when the temple is standing. Others, biblically, there's no distinction, but there's rabbinic law that makes a distinction, right? And says that today we don't do it. Okay? This is a decree, lest a consecrated animal be eaten when it is unblemished, and that's when will be violating transgression punished by karis, which is premature death from the hands of heaven. Slaughtering consecrated animals outside the temple courtyard. If one transgresses and tithe in the present era, the animal is designated as a tithe offering and should be eaten after it contracts a disqualifying blemish. So here, let me explain over here. So why did the rabbis come and do that? Is because if you had an unblemished animal, right? Because you have no one to give it to today, right? You have no one to give it to. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen? You might eat that animal, and therefore, because it doesn't belong to you, right? It has to be given to the Kohen, but you ate it, right? Why would you eat? Why would you? Aside from, forget about the Kohen aspect, but because you're not living in a time when these laws are being observed so much. Agricultural laws on the land, tithing of the land, and all these things. And this one would be observed. People are not going to observe it properly. And what's going to happen is they're going to end up eating an animal that they shouldn't eat. And they would be punishable by death by the hands of heaven. And the rabbis didn't want to the sages didn't want to put a person in such a situation. So they said, you know what? Law doesn't apply now.
The wise thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what happens if you did tithe? What happens if you did tithe the animal and took the 10th animal and you did do that, which you're not supposed to today, right? Mm-hmm. It's designated. It's a law. It is a biblical law. So once it's that, let me say, how could the rabbis do this? Because there's a process how we're going to learn the process on how the 10th animal. There's no, until you have the 10 animals, and there's a process you can see, you have to go through a corral and it goes, the animals have to go one by one, and the 10th one becomes holy, right? If you didn't do that process, it hasn't been tithed. So till you come to that, it's not a tithed animal. So they said, don't do the process. Don't do the process. So then you won't have a tithed animal. But what if you did the process? Right, that's what he's just said now. So you should take that animal that should contract a blemish that makes it no longer sanctified. That's now that it's not sanctified, you can eat it. I mean, it can be eaten. You can slaughter it and eat it. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
Halacha number 3. All are obligated in the tithing of their animals, priests, Levites, and the Israelites, even though, right, the Kohen, right, it's something to be give to the Kohen. He still has to do it, right? He'll have to give it to another Kohen. Okay, number 4. The laws applying to tithe offering of an animal are that it should be slaughtered in the temple courtyard. Right, that's what it means. You tithe it, it's got to go now to the holy temple. And the blood cast on one heave towards the altar's base. Its organs and fats are offered on the altar's pyre. And the remainder of the meat is eaten by the owner in Jerusalem, like other sacrifices with a lesser degree of sanctity. Oh, 1 second. I made a mistake over here. Why did I think it was given to the priest? The priest does not receive any portion of it. I'm sorry. This is like the 10% that you have to take from your produce. This is now of the animal. Just like if your produce, right, you have to take 10% and bring it to Jerusalem to celebrate there. So from your fruits and from your grain, you have to bring it there, right? So likewise, from your animal, you also have to bring it. I don't know why it's a good thing that we have to learn this every year. So so much information. I forgot that detail. The important one. Okay. So the coin doesn't get, right, any portion, but the owner does. Some of it is on the altar, and most of it is eaten, right? It's only the organs and the fats that go, but the rest of the meat is eaten by the owner. So he's coming now, let's say, to celebrate the holidays. He's, another offering. So it's given to its owner in its entirety, like the Paschal sacrifice. If it was blemished, whether it became blemished after it was designated or was blemished when it was set aside, it may be eaten in any place. In other words, if it's blemished, remember, what does it mean blemished? A blemished animal cannot go on the altar. Exactly. Even though only parts of it are going, only the fats and the organs, right? But it's a blemish, so it's not fitting for the altar. It's still got the law of the 10th, right? Right? So what does it mean? You can eat it in any place now. Why? Because so you don't need to redeem it because it doesn't have sanctify. It's not sanctified.
It still has sanctity, but lesser.
No, it seems like I think it's lost all of it. It was, yeah. No,
I thought that's what it said in 4.
no, we're talking about it was blemished, right? So it's eaten by its owner. No portion is given to the Kohen. nor does it need to be redeemed. And it can be eaten anywhere. Whereas if it had sanctity, you have to eat it in Jerusalem, right? Now that it's blemished and can be on the altar, so yeah. It is forbidden to sell an animal designated for a tithe offering when it is unblemished. If it says regard to it, it shall not be redeemed, meaning you can't sell it. According to the oral tradition, the phrases shall not be redeemed also implies a prohibition against selling it. It is neither redeemed nor sold at all. It appears to me that when one sells an animal designated as a tithe offering, the sale is of no consequence. The animal is not acquired by the purchaser. For this reason, the seller is not liable for lashes, like one who sells property designated as a dedication offering to the Kohanim, to the priests, in which instance the purchaser does acquire it, and the one who sells or like one who sells a female captive, as we explained in its place. We'll have to see for that. Okay. According to rabbinic law, it is forbidden to sell an animal designated when it is slaughtered, that this is a decree unless one sells such an animal when it is alive. For this reason, we may not weigh one portion against another, as is done when weighing portions of the firstborn, because it appears as if he is selling it. Uh-huh. Right. So even after, remember, it's your meat that you can eat it, right? So why can't I sell it? I slaughtered it, sell it now. Can't sell. Rabbinic law, you can't sell it because then you might sell it when it's alive, and that you can't do biblically. So there's like a fence around the law. The rabbi said that even after you've slaughtered that portion, which is slaughtered it, right, and put on the altar, whatever you put on, it needs to go on the altar, the fats and the organs, that meat, which is yours, you can't sell it because we don't want it that you may then make a mistake and sell it you before you slaughtered it. Okay. Number 7. An animal designated as a tithe offering that belongs to orphans is permitted to be sold in an ordinary manner after being slaughtered when blemished. To prevent the orphans from suffering a loss, our sages did not uphold the decree in this instance. So orphans, the Torah is very careful with because they're orphans. They need to be special care, and therefore they could sell it after slaughtered, right, to help them. Trying to understand what the suffering of a loss over here is. Why would you suffer a loss? I'm not certain. Maybe because it's a lot of meat. Maybe it's a lot of meat, and therefore so therefore you may not use it all. I'm not clear on that. Why you would suffer a loss? When animal designated as a tithe offering is slaughtered when blemished, is permitted to sell its fats. Right? Because remember, nothing's going on the altar now, right? Because it's blemished. So you can sell its fat, sinews, hide, and bones. Only the sale of the meat was prohibited. Other things you could, because the fact that you could sell only part of it, then that kind of embeds in you the idea that I shouldn't sell it when it's not slaughtered. So, but yeah, the other things, those things you could sell. Remember, because it's a rabbinic law about not selling, not biblical law. So we have to remember that when it comes to biblical law, why is the law the law? because that's what the Torah states. It's got no, it doesn't have to have any rationality to it, because God doesn't need to be rational, because God created rationale. He's not limited to rationale, and definitely not our rationale, right? Not our logic. He's not limited to that. So it doesn't have to be, that's why when we're learning Chumash and Rashi, or even when we're learning Rambam, Rambam's not giving us reasons. He's saying this is what the verse says. That's biblical law. Rabbinic law is not like that. Rabbinic law will take into consideration rationality. It's not because oh, that's a failure. No, because that's what it's empowered to do. It's to take into consideration the human condition. So the human condition will be that, oh, the meat itself I can't sell, because if I sell it after I slaughtered it, I might make a mistake that before slaughtering, I will also sell it. And that I can't do biblically, right? So the rabbi said, don't do it even afterwards, just as a safeguard. Oh, for orphans, we're not going to say that, because there's another consideration, rational consideration, that we do everything that we can to prevent any loss for them. There might be a loss for them, so therefore they could sell the meat. But everything else you could sell. The sinews, the fats, the hide, right? Because there we're not concerned that if you sold that maybe next year when you might sell before the slaughter the animal itself, because we're making that distinction.
The oral law is all about protecting the Torah, the written Torah. The fact is
No,
always
no,
about
no,
protecting
no, no. That's rabbinic law. Oral law can be biblical.
rabbinic. Yeah,
Rabbinic law
is about protecting.
is about protecting. It's primarily about protecting, right? That's rabbinic law. Oral law is also what God told Moses at Sinai. He told him, it says to put on tefillin. It doesn't say black boxes. It doesn't say leather straps. It doesn't say, the size or whatever. That's all oral that was given at Sinai, but it's biblical.
Yes.
Okay? Okay. We got to stop over here. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi.